This episode is brought to you by Verizon. Get a Verizon Business Unlimited plan from the network businesses rely on. Hey, Monica, with 5G Ultra Wideband in many more cities, you get up to 10 times the speed at no extra cost.
Hello, downloads in no time.
Plus, unlimited premium data and hotspot data to keep the signal flowing and your teams going. Come in or book an appointment with a Verizon business expert to find the right plan for your team. 5G Ultra Wideband available in over 1,700 cities with Business Unlimited Pro 2.0 smartphone plan. Speed comparison is to median Verizon 4G LTE speeds. Download speeds may vary depending upon network and coverage conditions and content optimization for 5G Ultra Wideband.
Xfinity Internet is fast, like beyond gig speed fast. And it's powerful enough to connect hundreds of devices at once. Unbeatable Internet, made to do anything, so you can do anything. Get supersonic Wi-Fi with a new Xfinity 3-for-1 bundle. Unlimited gig internet with a 2-year rate guarantee, a free streaming box, and add Xfinity Mobile. Go to Xfinity.com/3-for-1. Call 1-800-XFINITY or visit a store today. Restrictions apply. Actual speeds vary. Xfinity Mobile requires post-pay Xfinity Internet. After 24 months, regular rates apply to all services and devices.
And welcome to this episode of the Media Roundtable. It's Jennifer Lane, Head of Marketing and Special Projects for Oxford Road. At our agency, our clients span many industries. From D2C to B2B, we work with a wide array of clients serving an even wider array of customers. One of the things they each share is a strong sense of purpose built on clearly defined values. That has never been more important than right now, as the Edelman Trust Barometer was recently released, and it shows corporations are the most trusted entities. Not the media, not the government, not even nonprofit, businesses. This week, we're super excited to share another panel from our time at South by Southwest, where Dan Granger, founder and CEO of Oxford Road, sits down with Jory Desjardins, CMO of Countable, and Natasha Simcoe-Morgan, head of enterprise marketing at Indeed. They discuss how important brand values are and how to actually measure brand purpose. Right now and always, we have known customer trust is everything, and choosing when to publicly comment on a cultural or political issue can be a very challenging decision. With companies being called out for staying silent or, on the other side, for purpose washing, it's critical they get it right. How do they do that? Well, Jory, Dan, and Natasha provide their perspective here.
Welcome to Audio House. This is co-hosted by Oxford Road, which is the ad agency that I am the CEO and founder of. We have joined in partnership with Barometer, which is led by Tamara. And we're really excited because this marks the launch of our beta program to bring brand safety and suitability to the podcast industry. And the way that we're doing that is with nutrition labels for media, so that you can actually see objectively what are the different components of the content that you're sponsoring or consuming or potentially publishing, and be a little bit more informed in the way that you approach it. So that's the genesis of what's brought us all together here today. Now, one of the things that I think is important is to talk to actual people who are on the other end of what we're trying to create and launch. And this is very much a product that is for marketers. Marketers are facing unprecedented challenges right now. They're being asked to do a lot. There has, a lot of you may have tracked with kind of the shift from the shareholder capitalism model to the stakeholder capitalism model. The consequence is that brands are expected to have a purpose, to have values, and to carry out that purpose through the supply chain and also what they promote. Meanwhile, we all have to generate more sales. So I am here with two veteran marketers. We have our friend Jory, who is with Countable. She's a CMO at Countable. We have our friend Natasha, who's with Indeed. By the way, Indeed is an Oxford Road client. I should disclose that to you. But two very seasoned veterans in the marketing community to talk about their experience in facing some of these challenges. So Jory, why don't we start with you? And I'll ask the same question to both of you. In your career, how have the expectations changed for marketers in terms of balancing brand values and business objectives?
So I go way back to like Web 1.0 days
And I started my career actually on the publishing side, and there was always that church and state. And in print, we had what you called ASJA guidelines, ASJA, ASJA. And that was where you created the church and state between your advertising and your content. And those were sacred. And as an editor, I would never cross that line. Then later, when I had my own startup in the Web 2 world, it was a blog network, and we started to innovate on advertising on blogs. And the key there was brands wanted a piece of that. They wanted to have those conversations and break that line. And we worked with the FTC at the time to break or to keep the line there around disclosure and best practices. And we've always had that tension. Now with Web3, we're almost fighting back against the tech because it's gotten so good at telling us more. I'll tell you, like in Web2, we started to see, all right, now advertising can target, which was a great thing, but it was no longer contextual. It was not about the content anymore. It was about the end user. So the person who's reading this is a mom with 2 kids living in Kentucky, and that's why she's getting this ad. It has nothing to do with whether or not this pertains to the content that she's reading, which I found really disheartening as a publisher. Fast forward, as a marketer, I've always tried to keep that line, but that line is increasingly hard to maintain because the technology, again, keeps crossing that line. So in terms of what are the expectations as a marketer, it's to always respect the end user at the end of the day. Like, that is the expectation. But increasingly, it's difficult. I was really encouraged because I went to the panel by Tristan Harris on Saturday around where are we with tech, because he got everyone riled up around the social dilemma and the people as product advertising model. And he answered the question, or started to answer the question, and now what? Now that you're all up in arms and we know that there's a lot of work we need to do on the social media side and on the Web 2 side to help create better experiences for the end user, what does that mean? And to me, it sounded like he was saying, we're going to take a step back in order to move forward. And we have to bring the humanity back in the tech. So we don't want to go back so far as we no longer can trust that an ad is appropriate or right. But we do expect to have it mean something and to be relevant, or it doesn't make anyone happy. And that's a bad brand look. So that is where I've been focusing a lot of my time as a marketer now, is how do you create the halo effect, because the messaging that I'm imparting now actually makes sense to the end user.
That's great. And before we go to you, Natasha, do you mind just giving us a little background on Countable and
Sure.
what you're doing there? Because I think it also ties in with some of the themes we're touching today.
Yeah. So Countable is what we call a Community 3.0 community engagement platform. So in Web 2, when you created communities, it was great that we had social tools that enabled them, but those social tools also eroded the trust that a lot of the communities that were on the platform started to feel. And we were getting a lot of feedback from brands saying, well, we're not really trusted because we're on Facebook, or because we're in a forum where our customers know that we're using their data at the end of the day. So we created a platform that is first-party data only, zero-party data as well, fully opt-in, custom communities for brands, and that bring in engagement around shared purpose, social impact, shared passions. We power Tesla's car communities, their clubs. And then we also have communities like Fuel Our Democracy, which is Starbucks community with their baristas around getting out the vote. And that is a much better brand look, to be aligned with a shared purpose versus a cup of coffee. Although I have nothing against a cup of coffee.
Okay, I'm going to go one more deeper, and then we're gonna move on. But so, do you feel like a company like Countable would have been able to be successful 10 or 20 years ago when purpose wasn't so important?
So Countable has roots that are political. And I think after the elections, they were creating, they being the team that originally had built Countable back in 2013. Thank you, Massimo. had really built it around creating engagement for users. And it was great because we had a ton of people. I mean, community, millions of people were coming in, galvanizing and bringing in their communities, but the brand experience wasn't there. And brands were saying, we want to support causes, but we also want it to be around a shared purpose. And that was when we rethought what we were doing. We still have causes.com, our sister company, but Countable is really about taking the tools of gathering in a trustworthy environment and making them available to companies. And that pivot was about 3 years ago.
Thank you for that. Okay, so Natasha, thank you for being here. Can you give a little bit of background on yourself, and then also share your thoughts on the tension between brand values and business objectives as a marketer?
Sure, thank you. I also go way back. I built Web 1.0 websites. That was the start of my marketing career. Before, I've spent a huge part of my career in marketing technology, Eloqua and then Oracle Marketing Cloud. Led marketing for a startup that was a first-party data platform through the Cambridge Analytica fund that we had. And now am at Indeed. And I won't speak as much on behalf of Indeed. You have Jennifer coming in later, who leads all of our brand efforts. I advise companies that are pursuing ways to solve for this balance of brand safety and suitability and mapping that to business objectives. And one of the things that I see is suitability and safety have been separated in the past, and now they're inextricably interdependent with one another. You want your advertising, your content to be relevant to your consumer, your audience, but now the consumer and audience has an expectation beyond a brand having purpose to it actually taking positions on particular world events or moments in time. And you have a delivery always on of media that could or couldn't be suitable or safe for the brand and their values at any moment. And we're in massive reactive mode at this moment in time. So brands need to be consistent, but they also need to be highly contextual. And one of the things I ask companies I talk to is, well, does the brand have their mentality defined well enough to either inform their agencies or the platforms on how to react at a moment in time? That's one. And then how is that content created in an always-on format? And what does it mean? And this is not so much towards, what does it mean for a brand and a business to look at their business objectives and meet the expectations of taking positions at moments in time and long term? Like that's I come more from the brand side and like how do we meet the tech? So I definitely appreciate your point of bringing the humanity back into that tech conversation, and how do you balance it? Like, what do we let the tech do? Where's the human element?
So are marketers today hearing more voices challenging them on what they are aligning themselves with and standing for, or kind of typical ROI metrics? And how do we see brand lift? How do we see more customers and the right CPA? What's the louder voice right now?
Well, I've had several conversations with marketers. We do this at South by. We talk to each other. And some have told me that I recall like maybe 10 years ago, it was all about getting more precise. Like what is the value of a like, of a share, and how is that helping with my brand lift? And there are all kinds of tools that were helping to identify what that looked like. Now it's about brand purpose. I was talking to a marketer in healthcare who said that, how do I raise the trust level among in clinical trials so that we could get more people engaged in an ongoing manner? So how do you raise the trust level, and how do you measure the trust? Which is a much tougher question. I mean, we can measure pretty much anything in tech, but actually backing it into trust is a really difficult conversation. So I think that's where we're getting, is how are we showing social impact lift as opposed to just lift.
And how are you doing that?
Well, we're working on it. No, truthfully, what we're doing is so Countable, the platform, captures a lot of activity data. So, for example, in any one campaign, we might have anything from like an advocacy campaign. So we know people that engaged here. We take them through. It's like a pipeline of engagement. So maybe first time you're just reading something, but maybe the next time you're commenting. Then maybe the next time you're actually sharing this. Maybe the next time you're going to engage in a petition. So we actually capture that data in an aggregated format, and then we make a story about like, okay, we saw this kind of a lift in social impact, and these were the actions that led to that, and make the correlation. And it's something that we've just started to do to actually make that case of action to social impact.
And how about you, Natasha?
I just, as you were talking, it got me thinking, and indeed, we're testing some new platforms that measure things more like brand love and like the type of brand you are on various points of data. And of course, we also run the standard kind of brand tracker that asks perception statements, and they're usually around what our audiences think of us as a company and the services we offer. Now I'm wondering, are we going to start asking questions on, with our audiences, what is based their purpose, like, and how much does that affect what we do? I think it's just a very interesting moment. I'm Ukrainian descent, actually. And so if you even think about it from a personal perspective, flipping back, I keep going back to the human always. My middle name is Sinutko, Ellis Island spelling. And, it's really interesting, how that might impact you in this moment in time as a person, as a consumer, as an employee, and to see. So I'm probably even a little more attuned right now at how companies are taking positions at this point in time. How does that align to business objectives? That's a really, really hard question for every company and really knowing their audience, knowing their values, knowing their audience's values, and be able to articulate that in placement. And how much do you take a position? How much do you leverage that position and put that out in the media as well? And in what channels and at what moment and what vehicle?
Just going back to the conversation I had with the marketer, she was telling me that I asked her what her perfect world looked like, and she said, I want to know everything about that person, from what they like, what they care about. And then, of course, I want to know about how often is she taking the meds? Is she taking it on time? And all of the behaviors. And she said, but mostly I want them to trust me. And that is like the holy grail.
Right?
You take the wrong position, that trust goes away, and it is not easy to get back. Like as a consumer of, say, Glossier, I discovered that it wasn't a product line at first. It was a blog. Grew affinity there. As soon as news came out, and that was years of building trust or affinity, and as soon as news came out of what the CEO's behavior was, I was like, I'm not so interested. You don't turn back. And how do you address when you break someone's trust? What does that look like? Do you work on regaining that? How does that tie to business objectives? I mean, you ask how marketing's responsibility has shifted. That is the seat at the table at that moment in time.
I do think that's why engagement is so much more important now, because it's the only indicator of trust or at least connection with the brand. Otherwise, you're kind of talking to an audience and having no idea what the impact is. So if they're not taking any action or there's no engagement, then it's almost impossible to truly measure.
So at Oxford Road, we picked a cause that we were going to be really focused on and advocating for, and it's called the Koala Corps. It's something we launched to help bring volunteers to our local children's hospital so that there's always somebody to hold the babies who don't have somebody bedside. Nobody's ever disputed that we should affiliate with that cause. We've never had any pushback on that. Now, in the last 2 years, we see brands taking positions on much more controversial topics, things that half the country may not agree with. As a marketer, how do you think about what causes you align with, if they're political or if they're controversial?
What isn't political or controversial now? I don't know. Almost that's the only example I can come
Maybe
up
we
with.
got the only one.
I mean, as a marketer, I think that goes back to actually the potential for a platform to be able to really be surgical and precise about what your values are, and even go so far as, say, a machine learning algorithm to put together all the components you put in and help you orchestrate that. That's like more the tool side. I think the human needs some help from tech to instrument that and to activate that. And I don't think anybody has it completely figured out, but I've seen a ton of companies that are really striving and see the opportunity for brands to either pass on taking a position or take a position, and then what position that should take.
Do you think that brands should or shouldn't take a position, or is it depends?
Well, so back to the story of how Countable grew up. We took positions, right? I mean, we had communities that were, and we didn't pick the causes, but our communities did. So we went with where the community took us. Where we landed was, again, around the shared purpose, which we could still take a stand, but it wasn't about a political candidate or a specific cause. Another thing I want to point out, though, that I'd like to borrow a page from Apple, who we may recall in 2020 took a stand for privacy, and truly made a decision that could have impacted its bottom line. Now, granted, we can all debate about how it was very strategic, because really they just took the rug from under Facebook and potentially Google. But it was a pretty risky position to take. But because they took that, you knew where you stood from a customer experience. If you had any question about Android or my iPhone, and you had a strong stance on privacy, boom, you now knew which side you were on. So I think that there should be some brand stance. Now, you have to know where you are no matter what. This can't be a political stand. It's got to be something that is so grounded in your values. And for Apple, it's grounded in the tech now. You can opt in and out to experiences, or you're naturally opted out. That is period. And I think a lot of tech has been, in its libertarianism, has been very pick your focus. Pick which, we're going to give you all the options you can pick. And so people say, well, I picked nothing, and then they're exploited. So helping to lead with a direction, I think, is actually going to be of value to a consumer moving forward.
Same question.
Yeah.
I think I will just back you up. I think really you have to know where you stand as a brand. And I would also, marketers also to some extent are responsible for their employer brand and their employees and what their employees think about them. So there needs to be a thread between your workforce, your culture, your workplace, your customers, your business objectives. I think that's a perfect example. I'm sure Apple was quite intentional in its business outcome there, but had a brand already that could stand on that position and be credible. And that takes a lot of work and self-reflection and clear-eyed vision. Not many companies can meet that bar all the time, 100% of the time. So it's got to be also an active evaluation process, and you're probably going to need different people in tech to help you get there.
I think you have to be willing to give up a quarter if that's the case. And that is, that's a really difficult thing to do. But I think in the long run, we're going to see more of that.
Well, it was interesting. In 2020, we started hearing more of the term virtue signaling, right? And I think when companies it was maybe a little cheaper to raise your hand and go, I'm for this thing that everybody's for today. And then I think by 2021, it seemed like there were some efforts in the press to start to hold companies accountable for the pledges that they made. What I'm wondering about this whole shift from the shareholder capitalism model and focus on profit first to the stakeholder capitalism model, which can be a lot more altruistic and deal with a lot more parties and their interests, is will we survive a recession in that? Those of us that are going, yay, purpose. Like, what happens when the Dow is down 25%, in 30 days? Like, what do those things go away? Do those things survive? Does it just weed out those that weren't really serious about their causes? What happens, and how sustainable is it with the trend that we're seeing today?
I don't think it goes away, and I'm speaking probably more from the perspective of marketing to globally to people looking for work. And I'll just draw an analogy. We are seeing across the board, whether you are a toll booth operator or a software engineer, you want your work to matter after what we've all been through for the last couple of years. And we are taking the position that it's irrevocable as a brand and that you have to be human first in your hiring. And that in itself is a position to take. Recession may just even draw more focus on your dollars need to go where they drive the business and in where your audience lives and cares about. We're just going to be constrained economically more than situationally. And that just puts more of a laser focus on values and purpose and what matters in this life.
I'm going to make a point that we had in our earlier conversation together around the Edelman Trust Barometer, which some of us may know, especially on the marketing side. Every year, Edelman, the PR firm, puts out the Trust Barometer, a report on where is trust in the world. This is its 22nd year. And this year, I'd say the big learning for me anyway was that the public generally puts less trust now in the media and in government and more trust in corporate, which is a massive shift from where it used to be. And I think it puts the onus of responsibility on companies now to hold that responsibility and to say, well, come on, we got to make money this quarter. It's such a short-term way of thinking. I mean, to squander the trust that they have built over the course of years is foolish, even in an economic uncertainty.
Are you teeing me up to talk about? All right, this is where I get to share some opinions. So with the Media Roundtable, we really dug into this topic. And one of the things we saw, we started a podcast kind of as like a living laboratory to explore polarization and what our contribution is to that. We wanted to look at ourselves and drop our preconceived notions and our defenses and really get as many perspectives as possible to try to form an opinion. What we ended up learning about, talking to a lot of different journalists, is that the standards have changed. We had this kind of peculiar feature in American journalism in the 20th century where you had this notion of even-handedness, journalistic integrity, which was really a byproduct of just publications trying to scale their reach, but then it became much more profitable. If you saw The Loudest Voice, or you saw like the Roger Ailes model of Fox News, where it's like, we don't need everybody, we just need to fire up this base. And then what we saw happening was, this isn't just Fox, everybody started doing it. The attention economy rewards the loudest voice, whatever that loudest voice is going to be about. You want impressions, your business is about getting more impressions, that's going to work. And the engagement drives more conversions. So the problem is publications and professional creators now have an economic incentive to polarize us, to divide us, to exploit our differences. What do you do when the fourth estate, like who watches the Watchmen? What do you do when they no longer are able to have a sustainable business model to do the thing that we depend on the American press to do? We have this notion that there is a fifth estate now that is being established, and that is with brands. Brands that are truly purpose-focused, that have values that they want to uphold. And what we did with the Media Roundtable was we identified 6 values that we felt people, reasonable thinking people, wherever you are on the political spectrum, we can all probably agree these are good practices to reward and return to. And we wanted to give brands something that they could measure content against to see, am I helping or hurting society by supporting this content? So advertisers now can be a check on media, and we believe that politics is downstream from culture, culture is downstream from media, and brands are what's funding that. So we believe that by shifting the incentive structure and giving more awareness to brands so that they can stay true to their values and not that we can disincentivize the problems that have been making us all miserable. So that's that.
I am so in favor of everything you just said, but I think, at this point, brands have been trying so hard to be influential, and now, you got the influence. The responsibility is now on a brand to take a stand. I am absolutely convinced.
It is interesting, though. If you had thought 20 years ago we'd be talking about trusting companies, more than the media, and there's a dark side to that. So the people at your round table have to want to be at that table and hold true to common values across the board. That isn't the case for every brand or every company, even the largest ones. So I guess another larger question is, what's the incentive to come to the table if you don't lead with that, and how to build that to transform the industry in that way?
What we're hoping is peer pressure and accountability. I have heard somebody told me that Bloomberg was starting to report on the pledges of social good that companies made, and actually advertising whether or not they fulfilled those promises, right? We think that that's real. We take marketers at their word that, look, there may have been a minute where everybody was, throwing logos up on Instagram and thinking that they did something for humanity, right? But now I think people are actually doing some work and trying to figure these things out, and companies like yours are holding them accountable and able to measure progress. So kind of the thesis behind what we're celebrating and launching here today is that if you give them the tools to be able to live out the values that they post on their websites, they will start to support media that also adheres to those values, and that the market for the divisiveness starts to shrink. We want to kill their TAM, right?
Leads me to another question, so let's look at Oxford, right? So you are stewards of brand safety. So how do you thread that needle for a brand that's like, hey, it's my safety here. This is how I want my brand to be reflected. So how do you have that conversation?
If I'm understanding your question, so what we started doing prior to Barometer, the first advancement that we were able to make in this space was we partnered with a group called Ad Fontes Media. They make the media bias chart, which basically, if you haven't seen it, and it's viral, it hangs in thousands of classrooms across the country, but basically they have a y-axis. It's based on the reliability of media, and an x-axis that is based on the political position left to right. So you can kind of see if somebody's extreme, political and extreme, or if they're moderate. So brands don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and go no politics. If you're top center, that's okay. We want to support that kind of journalism, right? So what we started doing was meeting with our clients, and we started with a survey to say, okay, and there were some forced choice exercises on there, okay, take the slider, and on one side you have ROI, and on the other side you have brand values. Where do you want your money to go? Because the reality is there can be an inverse correlation. The dirty little secret that most people don't want to admit is that the more measured you are, the less emotional you're going to make people, and therefore you're actually going to lose some advertising impact. We have to live with these realities. We have to also accept that media, for many or most, is entertainment. So you can't just, expect that they're all going to hit straight down the middle on everything. But we do want to act within reason, right? So helping brands just go through an exercise of having to think about these things. And we had some clients that were like, I can't answer these questions because we haven't answered these questions. But our hope is that by leading them through this process, that they'll be able to think about these things in a different way and connect it to actual practical outcomes.
Yeah, it's actually full circle where we started. I think that's fascinating. And how do brands let their customers, consumers, audiences know what their values are through media? So it's,
Did I lose my sound? So one of the things we also saw start happening was, you used to see controversies with people that were on TV or the radio or whatever years ago. But now it's, with media fragmentation, and there are millions and millions of, I guess billions of creators in a sense, right? That you can sponsor, how do you think through those issues? Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Jory. This was wonderful.
As always, this show is dedicated to our mission of mobilizing marketers to advance truth and civility in journalism. We value clarity, truth, fairness, respect, de-escalation, and tolerance. If you like what you hear, we'd love your help spreading the word. So please remember to share, review, and invite others to follow our podcast. We love feedback, so please send us a note with your comments and questions at MediaRoundtable.com. Also, if you're a marketer looking to balance your business objectives with your brand values, please reach out to our agency, Oxford Road, by visiting oxfordroad.com. Also, subscribe to our weekly newsletter, The Influencer. A special thanks to Dan, Bianca, Kyle, Amy, the team at Podcast One, and to Lana at Purpose North America. And as always, influence responsibly.
This episode is brought to you by Verizon. Get a Verizon Business Unlimited plan from the network businesses rely on. Hey, Monica, with 5G Ultra Wideband in many more cities, you get up to 10 times the speed at no extra cost.
Hello, downloads in no time.
Plus, unlimited premium data and hotspot data to keep the signal flowing and your teams going. Come in or book an appointment with a Verizon business expert to find the right plan for your team. 5G Ultra Wideband available in over 1,700 cities with Business Unlimited Pro 2.0 smartphone plan. Speed comparison is to median Verizon 4G LTE speeds. Download speeds may vary depending upon network and coverage conditions and content optimization for 5G Ultra Wideband.
Xfinity Internet is fast, like beyond gig speed fast. And it's powerful enough to connect hundreds of devices at once. Unbeatable Internet, made to do anything, so you can do anything. Get supersonic Wi-Fi with a new Xfinity 3-for-1 bundle. Unlimited gig internet with a 2-year rate guarantee, a free streaming box, and add Xfinity Mobile. Go to Xfinity.com/3-for-1, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today. Restrictions apply. Actual speeds vary. Xfinity Mobile requires post-pay Xfinity Internet. After 24 months, regular rates apply to all services and devices.